Okay. Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to tonight's episode. The title has arose. History has given us a reason to respond to the void. Now, I consider this to be a very important idea. I consider this to be a responsibility of every human being to try to see what we're doing here. At all. I thought about how there is something here rather than nothing. In some sense, our species, human beings, we have focused on knowledge, the known. And so, as a strategy, as 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, evolving slowly throughout time, gradually, I think just a second. 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. We're objects that have become subjects to ourselves and are maintaining our, in some sense, just mere existence. Our physical existence is surrounded by a sort of subjective momentum. It's as if we are subjectively alive as an object, and if the subjectivity is not there, it's like deep sleep. It's like unconsciousness. It's the absence of the ideological person, So, when one looks at a cup that is full, or let's say that is half full, the observations that are made are that the cup is, you could be a pessimist or an optimist about life, it's half full, it's half empty. However, the cup is designed to exist whether water or any sort of fluid is in it or not. This metaphor of the cup that I'm using. So in some sense, some people, they get an empty cup and they cry over it. Some people, they look at an empty cup and they're like, oh my God, this can be filled up. And I feel that is how history has in some sense given us a reason to respond to the void. History is how we notice there's nothing in the cup and we put it in there. I'm talking about the subjective meaning of the human being. Right now, you listening to me, you're listening to me as a subject. Maybe you're maybe you have found the witness within. But I'm saying most people, when there is understanding of the realm, when there is trying to engage the story of the world, you become a character in the story. So for me, it's like when I look at my objective existence, sure, I can grant evolution. Excuse me, not evolution. it's plausible to see that there was a giant explosion from a state where there weren't things to a state where things arose, you know? Now, whether the Big Bang was a big seed or a bang, that's different, you know? Because a seed planted steps out of the soil and new, yet we don't know what was there before. There is something here. And that has made all the difference. That any human being, I honestly feel our brains are so advanced that we can fathom our own non-existence. And I feel that unless we become content as a species with the unknown, history will plague us, you know? But at the same time, it's an effort used as a response. It was like the best strategy. What could 8 billion, let's say, yeah, I mean, of course, it wasn't 8 billion at the beginning, but I'm saying, like, it's just like when I think about it, I'm like, what games are human beings playing? What games are we playing on this planet? You know, and that game is the story of mankind. You know what it is? It's like there is no. I would say the truth has come to this: that our human story is like a flame. All the subjects, all the ideas, all the ways human beings have animated into people, that is like the fire of an object. Do you know what I mean? It's a flame that requires to be protected, you know? Fire has been used in different analogies. Unfortunately for the Western, you know, for some traditions, you know, fire has been seen as a sort of archetype relevant to a negative connotation. But fire has no good and bad. Fire is transformation, you know. It is just, it in some sense burns everything that was there, and in some sense the new can arise. There's this Sufi saying, they say, the man who knows his devil knows his God. You know, and it's a very strange thing, because in the Sufi tradition, in some sense, their whole focus is God. But why was it said that you gotta know your chaos to know how ordered you can be? This doesn't mean the chaos has to actualize. This doesn't mean that evil has to pour out. It just means that the person has to get whether it's the Jungian shadow or Joseph Campbell's journey of the hero. The person wants to see the potential of their mind, the potential energy of the mind. Think of it in a very secular way. We want to get acquainted with that, and the kinetic energy of the body. That means how something is in a state of potential. Right now, all these words that I'm saying, before I say them, before anybody speaks, I feel this is the case, that there is access to an inner landscape, that the mind teleports, the body travels, the body journeys. You know, the body, it's as if the atoms have their own karma. Do you know? And so what is the eyes behind the scene? You know? And that could be spelled S-E-N-E or S-E-E-N. And you know what's beautiful? Human beings have different languages, but it's the same, it's sound. Ultimately, it's like sound, you know. It doesn't matter what you call, like, I'm bilingual. For I'll give you an example. It's like whether I call it red or I call it Hermes. You know, these are like, it's still red is red. Do you know what I mean? And I feel that there are certain observations of human nature that, regardless of what level of translation they go through, regardless of what a group of people thought back in the day or now, There are some dimensions of life that I would say their presence is by the mere avoidance of the opportunity of the void. So pretty much the Buddhists looked at emptiness and they're like, okay, this is like a sort of suffering, everything goes away. But at the same time, they were like, okay, this is also the end of suffering. Because in emptiness, what is there? What is there to lose? You see, there's something very fascinating that a person can lose, okay, until they lose. It's like a person can lose. When I'm saying lose, that means it's getting to the bottom. Do you know what I mean? That means think of whether it's society, whether it's metaphysical identity, whatever you see a sort of hierarchy, when you get to its lowest point, do you know? You will get to a moment where you'll notice you can't go any further up. You can't go any further down. Anything less down than your failure is non-existence. Right? So think of it this way, that it's like there is an experiential success, there's an experiential failure, there is an existential success, there's an existential failure. Okay? Now the balance of these is very key. You could be a person who is like existentially successful, experientially unsuccessful. That means you could be in a great position of existence. You could be like the prince to a kingdom, and yet your experiential success is not up to par, let's say. Or you could be living like a simple man, drinking tea out of paper cups, in the morning. So you could be simple, existentially very, like technically it's not in comparison to other modalities of existence a success, but experientially you could be very successful. That means you got to look at it this way. The mystic was the king of the mind, in a sense, was the royalty of the mind. The king in the outer realms was the king of the body. Do you see what I mean? There's some things, it all depends. When it's a multidimensional setting, there is non-locality involved. When non-locality is involved, we stop seeing the mind as an object. So technically, it's like the reason people have had a tough time explaining what's going on with human consciousness is because a state of it is like a river. And it's an interconnected river with universal activity. Like the tree's roots are connected to the soil, and the tree's like, am I the nature? Am I earth, or am I just the tree? Are my roots like, do you know what I mean? But we are rooted into a nature that is so faster than our languages. We don't realize. It's like a pool party where there's a pool, but nobody's using it. It's as if people don't see it. Imagine at a pool party, but nobody sees the pool, and the pool is there, and there's nothing wrong with the pool at all in any case. And of course, it could be because of the weather. But I'm saying, like, the idea is that there's something there, it is not being utilized, and that is the only secret of the soul. Without the story of the human being, the existence had to be unconscious. We have no choice but to live in the linguistic simulation in the same way that, let's say, somebody, you hear it in these modern, I'll say it like this, it's like there's this Native American metaphysics drew its inspiration from its intimacy with nature. Excuse me, guys. So its intimacy with nature meant an inseparability of the individual part of nature with the collective part of nature. This was catalyzed in shamanic traditions, in some sense, through a reverence for nature. That means there is a difference even between shamanic viewpoints. There is a shaman that is a druid. A druid means there is no ideological connection needed. There is an instant natural connection by the nature of how the karma of that entity was open, and nature was the ally of that person's karma. or it was necessary for them. Do you know, like Tarzan, you know, it's like it was written in the stars, you know, that the gorillas didn't kill him. Do you know what I mean? Like, you want to talk about divinity, you know? There is something that it's a behavioral maintenance, and we human beings, out of all the other creatures, like if you look at all the other animals on this planet, what are the differences and similarities? They are stuck, they are in unconscious behavioral loops. That means the animal that is in, let's say you see a wolf or a fox or something, right? Like, you can't think like that fox is thinking like a human being. That fox is like, I'm gonna, you know, chase this guy, get out of my forest. Like, the animal life is in sequence. That means really, technically, animals are dangerous because they're like machines. They're like machines that they don't have the consciousness to notice. Maybe like certain pets do that have been humanized, right? Because we know that creatures are behavioral recording moments. Do you know phenomenology? Right? We're literally creatures that see something and no way, we update. Do you know? We have managed to step out of an ancient, and it's been 250,000 years we've stepped out of it. Do you know that the Homo sapien, it went where no animal had gone before. It went to itself. Most creatures are outer driven. Something, some mirror. I know. It was. You know what it is? It's like, call it divine intervention, call it extraterrestrial intervention. A mirror was given to this creature, and it could be even beyond intervention. It could also be that the potential was built in. You know, sometimes when I give these talks, something very unique happens, as a personal thing to share on a side note. What happens is that as I begin to speak, my brain has no choice. Let's say my mind, the sphere of my awareness, has no choice but to use the alphabet of imagery it has access to. So when I come to speak, it has to do with how I have observed my inner realm landscape. Right, so that means if when a person, for example, runs out of things to say or doesn't know what to say, or the person has writer's block or anything like that, any sort of creative speed bump, the reasoning for that simply is that the film has been stopped. That means all creativity is the releasing of an inner film. And as a film student, you know, graduated film student of the outer realms and inner realms, I will tell you that life is a film. It's just that you don't know where it's being recorded from. My eyes have convinced me of many versions of myself. Pretty much every day the person wakes up, they see a new self. But it's all about a sort of sincerity with your own honest moment. There's a view that as a child, like when I was young, it became such a profound archetype, right? And it was the archetype of, how would I say it? Like, think of it this way, a person buttoning their jacket and going to work, you know? It's like the force that comes with command. Literally, it's the animation of the wind archetype to me. You know, so for me, I would say that when somehow a mirror allows you to be a commander of your moment without resistance to nature, it's like we want to continue the simulation of free will, yet at the same time we are realizing everything is present at once. You know, it's like in front of your eyes, you're in a film, you're not directing, the laws of nature are, do you know? And behind your eyes, you're in a film, you're directing, you know? At times, you know, depends on how the person uses their moment as an antenna, you know? Some people receive gracefully, some people receive intensely. Some people they haven't learned, like they are, let's say the person just tries to be gentle their whole life, they express things gently, right? But suddenly they wonder, why do intense and savage things happen, right? So the person in the outer realms is trying to be gentle, but somehow in the outer realms its gentleness is not finding the person. And the solution is to let go of the self that doesn't have the strength to continue, to allow the new self that has the strength to continue to come. Our eyes are universal gifts that, believe it or not, we opened the moment we opened them. On one side of the coin, yes, we are human beings, and the human story is heavy. But on the other side of the coin, it has all been the movement of light. The truth is, there has never been an ideological truth. There has been the presence of a living universe. That means it's like seeking truth is trying to define a person who is changing. Do you know? The common man allows the rage of the soul to be aimed at the body. But the uncommon man aims any sort of energetic resurfacing rage of the rage of the soul for the uncommon man is directed at the mind. That means there are two lives being lived. There's a self that has a relationship with all visible phenomena, which is the matter in the room, and there's a self that has a relationship excuse me. We are not only present in the world is present through us. The relationship we can have with space is to realize non-existence can't be feared. There's literally no content. There's nothing about it. We fear what we miss out on, never what happens after. When we were born, we didn't fear what happens after. And when the person is done, their work, their art, their masterpiece has been completed. They have found the masterpiece. And so the karmic masterpiece, you retire. Did you know there's something beautiful about creation? But strangely, there's something beautiful about, in some sense, destruction as well. It's strange, right? But this destruction is not, the beauty is not because of what it's being destroyed. The beauty is that it's an event. That nature and every human being that has been, in some sense, clothed in language, we have all been one existential event. That means there has been no birthdays. There has been no age. We are just an event of nature. As simple as it gets. It's all a reaction to emptiness. When I figured this out, I realized, this may sound strange, but I pitied our history, human history. You know, I am glorifying it in this talk, but I'm telling you, there's been moments where I have just looked at history and only 3 letters could come to my mind: WTF. And I thought about beyond the history books, and only 3 letters could come to my mind: FTW. For the win of the species. Because whatever reason a person gives to life, the unknown variable is there. And when a human being forgets that life has unknown variables, ideological systems lure in with promises. But there is no promise. You are the pilot of your own eyes. And let me tell you, in some sense, we're living in an era where people have forgotten the value of direct experiential truth. So it doesn't matter who's right, who's wrong. And because it hasn't mattered, because people have given up on the intellectual survival of the species. And when I say the intellect, let me tell you, the intellect's, its survival is love. That means you can build the most advanced thing ever, the best invention, but then you ask yourself, who did I build this for? That's the purpose of the intellect. The Raja Yogi suddenly sees how far ahead the Bhakti Yogi is. The Raja Yogi is the yogi who's seeking the path of knowledge towards liberation, the ultimate liberation. Right? The Bhakti Yogi is seeking the path of love. Right? So the Raja Yogi sees how karmically fast the Bhakti Yogi moves. Do you know? And then there is the Karma Yogi as well. Those souls who in some sense are still running in the battlefield. You have to make your peace before you open your eyes, or life can turn into hell. That is the way you work in this dimension. You trust the simple, and the simple becomes the portal to the complex, And the complex will try to sell you itself. But then it is only when the person doesn't buy that the complexity of knowledge like a salesman stops. And it's like, okay, so in some sense, it is befriending individual archetypes of advancement into a collective advancement so here that it was here like a seed planted. Do you know? Because if for whatever way, guys, I sit down and I think about it, right? This idea of the advanced civilization, it eventually will come. Human beings will break each other until they're like, what's the point? So we gotta fix something. And advancement doesn't just come from, stories of, yay, we're gonna do good things in the future. It's like it has to come from a need. Passion doesn't find you unless something is important. And life doesn't become important until you have become important to be real to yourself. This reality doesn't mean that like language is the truth of the world. Like right now when I'm speaking, language is the tip of the iceberg of all that I've experienced so far as a human being. The words I say in this moment. Language at best can be poetry. So for me it's like the hollowness you can find in language kind of renders it as the experiencer. That means just like a child, you see this in like young children, they play with toys, teddy bear, and the teddy bear in the mind of the child is the best friend. That means if the teddy bear is left in the house fire, the child cries. The child has imbued an inanimate object with animate qualities of its own character, in a new way. So technically in a toroidal field-like way, we're literally seeing things as objects, animate, inanimate, inanimate. So we have done the same thing with language, and we're acting like knowledge is truth, but the unknown is the greatest teaching of any university. That means I am waiting. I am just waiting to see the day where universities and all the teachers, before they begin class or begin teaching anywhere on the planet, right? The teacher comes and says, dear students, I'm just a human being like you on a rock in the middle of nowhere, right? And you may think this is a teacher kind of student thing, but it's like it's literally a species trying to open its eyes. If you can help it open its eyes, you've served more than you know. But there isn't that honesty. It's pretty much like ideological costume games, Because it is so important that the individual, we're worshipping the individual to a point that we're missing out on our collective. Imagine, for example, like 200 years ago, or maybe that's too far, but let me say, imagine 50 years ago, our species should have already hit that point. Buckminster Fuller, somebody who a lot of people don't know about, he's one of those I consider him a pilot. Do you know? He's one of the greatest designers on this planet, and he had the sentence where he said the universe man. And he didn't mean it like the universe man. He meant it the universe man, the universal man. That is our direction. Now, everybody can continue the ego's Shakespearean play till the end of time. Do you know? If language becomes more important than the living, actual, direct experience of the world, then it's as if we have already become machines. We don't know it yet. It's like we used to worship objects, and now you ask yourself this one question. Whoever you are on this planet, just honestly ask this question from yourself and see what you feel the answer is. Are we in an era of subject worship? That means people used to think an object was the only truth. Then it became a subject, and we still haven't moved on. Do you know? And you know how I know this? Because we don't have new languages. because the alphabets haven't changed for nations. You know, every day there should be new letters coming into creation. You know, but we don't care about language. You know, we just, in some sense, care about how the character in the story feels. You know, that means this world has become so. I mean, of course, I'm ranting, but it's like there's an artificial wave. It's like a smell. It's like an artificial smell is we don't know what the future generations are stepping on, but it's like there's this smell of becoming too easy to forget that we had to have an Aeonian patience. That means if you treat nature as the artwork of one of your life from its beginning, like if the human being thinks that if the human being thinks that the value of a life, a product of nature, some genetical line that has continued on and on and on. That's what we human beings are. We're literally like a genetical program just keeping itself on the surface of the planet before the void's jaws close. You know, time closes its jaws. If we lose our humanity, there's no point of living on as human beings. We might as well be clones. You know, if the real is not guarded, I was writing something down right now. I'm going to read it. Every moment is once in a lifetime in a lifetime. What does our species deserve? Does it deserve to get trapped in a linguistic simulation? Does it deserve to get trapped in a technological cyberspace simulation? Does it deserve not to exist? Does it deserve to access infinity? Does it deserve to transcend? And so, in the middle of all that the person is considering the species deserves, you see one word. Like, imagine you were French, deserve. You are serving. You deserve what you serve. I feel this is the nature of it. That service is the greatest game the individual can play when the collective system's victory is everybody's victory. So why not? That means if everybody wants to work hard, why doesn't everybody just work hard for everybody, for the whole system's benefit? So then it's easy. It's like it wasn't like every person is on their. It's like there's some species. Or let me say it like this: that it's literally like like what is it, like Transformers or like that kind of. I remember being a young kid seeing this like Power Rangers or something where the different people would join and they would connect and they would become some giant robot or something. I feel it that it's that some species, the way they're positioned, if they are alone they function better, but some species, the way they're positioned in nature, it's like their Texas Hold'em hand in this world, on the surface of this planet, is that they work better when they are collective. Now the issue is that each person is opening their eyes from their own inner realm first. So because we're opening our eyes from the inner realm, we can't consider that we know the world. That means any moment that any human being considers they know something, you close the doors, like a giant metal door just comes down between the inner and locks you in your inner realms. Right? That's the nature of things. Anything in the nature of just attention, anything the person holds on to, it occupies you. Right? So if I hold on to a certain belief about truth, it occupies me. Literally, I am every moment the idea comes, I have held it in a certain way. It's like the energy is being released that way. It's like as human beings, we're like, what do we do about space? It's like we can't do much there. We could maybe study it or try to comprehend its difference between doing something in space, in empty space, and being something in empty space. But when we look at matter, there's endless. It's literally like infinity is a material game. The void is an immaterial game. And the infinite void, that is our true home. This earth is not our home. The massive, vast space that is holding all of this is our home. That is the nature of being. Existentially, everybody's existing. Like, we can't say someone is existing better than another on a philosophical level. Everybody's equally, like, everybody is existence. So it could be fascinating that even though we can move our bodies, our work is not just our body's work. It is also a sort of the mind's river-like journey where memories dissolve in that river. It's like on an effect level. The person in the lifetime either, like Excalibur, pulls out the true nature of their attention, somehow finds a way to remember it, or the person has to endlessly leap like a frog or a rabbit from ideological algorithms. That means we're literally, on some level, it's like language is leading to the character in the story, and the character in the story is allowing us as objects to be separate from one another, to ourselves. But if the linguistic simulation shut down, it would be a silent intelligence. It doesn't mean that there is no intelligence, it would just be silent, until the opportunity to speak again arises. So we can say the same way civilizations are rising and falling, the planet keeps like manufacturing civilizations. Silence keeps building a potential to become a voice. I think speech is a divine metaphor. Literally just observing from silence sound being generated. Or imagine like you were looking at a pebble and the pebble started shaking, then started like hovering in the air or something. Do you know what I mean? Or the pebble started shaking, let's say on the ground, right? So it would be like we can say sound, what is like a speech that keeps our psychologies projected in real time. It's as if it's from a complete silence, and then it's like attention plus silence. From the moment attention is conscious, as it endures, becomes noise. So I would say sound is conscious, is like consciousness, like a chemical reacting with silence. So I'm saying silence. This is such a ridiculous equation, but anyways, silence plus consciousness equals potential sound. So we have to say that it's as if two dimensions are creating the potential for a singular dimension. So sound is like us, like when a person hears their name, they're like, yeah, that's me. Like sound is really us. It's like the known asked the unknown what is truth, and the unknown started laughing. That's honestly the best way the unknown can respond to man. Laughter, you know? And in the tonality or in the intuition of the moment, the person knows their outcome. It's like you can't drive a vehicle and not having seen a bit further ahead. Do you know? So it's as if our minds are like a scout faster than our body. Do you know? And our, I would say, the inner witness to be a scout faster than and quicker than the outer, as if like the viewer of like right now as I'm speaking to you, how am I conscious? I'm like a space, like the moment is a space of awareness, and I'm viewing it, right? So I'm viewing myself speaking. Do you know what I mean? So in some sense, we all are like this presence of awareness, a space, and then in accordance to how the body and sound moves, you know, based on the type of movement we animate. So we should treat ideological truth as a simulation built on sound and art. So knowledge is just sound and art in a world so vast. I mean, there is when I say I'm not saying it in an ultimately general way. See, like there's many ways the human species has known things. There's many human beings. There's technically 8 billion paths to knowledge, you know, and more as human beings arise with different DNAs and new eyes at the world of a new attempt at being able to know the world again, you know. Once the body no longer resists the mind, whatever the person thinks their mind is. Once your body doesn't resist your mind, right? You, in some sense, you trust. Your body trusts, your body becomes instantaneous. Think of people who have quick reflexes, right? And the mind is being the processor of what's happening in the environment, you know? So a body that is not resisting its own mind will be at first not able to use the mind, but be able to see the mind. Think of the mind like like a celestial lion, that lion cub, like a celestial lion cub, where if you try intensely to engage your mind, if the lion cub is going to like get violent, it's going to reciprocate the type of input into the awareness, you know. But if the person is playful, if the person is simple, if the person, let me tell you, animals, they don't care about our body language, honestly, if I was to say, because they're so energetically non-resistant to the moment. You know, that they know your intent. That means if you're afraid, the animal knows that shit. You know, if you're happy, the animal knows it. It's like the brain is giving that kind of wave, you know, to the moment. That means, think of it this way: people in today's world may not have the confidence of to command, but every person's brain is technically imposing a subjective layer upon the outer layer, in a way of saying, in a manner of speech. But I'm saying, as the brain is doing this overlaying subjective landscape imagery over objective imagery, and then emotionally linking that as a truth. Do you know? Nature cannot lie to itself, but man can. That means in a simple state, there is no secrets. In a simple state of mind, there is no secrets, you know. But in a complex state of mind, oh my God, so many ways of salvation. Holy shit. Like, there's endless ways, you know, of people resimulating the world while the world is being something on its own. And I would say for now, civilization 1.0, our current civilization, it has masked its face from the cosmos. And that mask is suffocating. For me, it's so fascinating that people nowadays they are so concerned of, for example, in this time of epidemic, of course, it's a very strange and intense time with this whole corona thing happening. But I'm saying it's as if like people, they don't like wearing masks. But for me, it's like, how have you been so comfortable wearing the ideological mask of thinking that we are a thought that can be judged? Technically, everything is the will, even from a theological lens, everything is the will of the Creator. Do you know what mistake? You're not moving it, the Creator is. From a theological lens. And from the secular lens, we find it that we have to create the meaning. So one view, there's something written on the paper, on the empty paper. On another view, you have an ability to write anything you want. Right? This is the cool thing about our world. What I feel nations are, that many national leaders don't realize this, but nations are like parts of a bigger global brain that haven't learned to neurally work with one another yet. They haven't realized they're part of the same brain. Do you know? So that is so key. That is so key that it's like, we build our civilization in the image of its creator, which is our biological body, even. This is totally on a tangent, but as a backup system, I felt that all of knowledge should be the alphabet for all the symbols, and alphabet for knowledge should be the biological body. So in this way, instead of when children in any educational system, imagine, okay, let's say in a future educational system, they are learning only biology, but every other branch of knowledge has found a way to connect itself to biology as a metaphor. That means, like, for example, you want to talk about the elements back in the day, it's as if, like, it represents the five fingers: earth, air, fire, earth, air, fire, water, ether. Your thumb is ether. Your thumb is chill. But I'm saying, like, either it's going to be a repeat of the past, or it's going to be something new. And literally, the great choice that all human beings have to decide at some point in their lifetime is that, do they want the past to limit the future, or do they want the future to limit their past? That means, how attached are we to history? If we're attached to history, do you know, imagine like a situation happens that suddenly Earth was going to explode from the inside. And advanced enlightened alien civilization came by, imagine, right, and came down to Earth and had all these next level, even human eyes for human eyes. And so in some sense, imagine this advanced extraterrestrial civilization came to Earth and it's like, guys, your planet's about to explode. Get into our spaceships, and trust us, and forget your history. Forget your history because you failed it. You failed it long ago. And imagine human beings are like, no, we're gonna stay on our planet. We have an ego on a planet that we didn't care about while we had the ego. It's as if like anything you don't water with your attention leaves the karma of your moment. I feel the great challenge of human life is not the question, what do we do with all this information? What do we do with all this knowledge? It's all about what do we do with the unknown. It's startling, but it's true. All knowledge is an invention to counter our psychologies of finding a way to enduring on a rock. Literally, it's like I have fought the idea that some have said like this planet is a sort of imprisonment, because you see it's literally like it's like a room. It's like a room where until we could build spaceships we're stuck in, right? And I thought about this idea of like, okay, we're seeing it as a prison, some people even say it's a school, you gotta behave well in the school and you get out of the prison, the karmic prison, and in the middle of this, what was nature's eyes seeing before the voice of man? The planet is our elder, but it seems we don't care for our elders. The mind is a world generator. That's its prime initiative. That means the mind is literally like letting loose, like a den of lions, onto like the sensory perception. Do you know what I mean? It comes from choice. Do you know? Anything becomes important for the person, really important, that means you become successful at it. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have to, for example, wash dishes. Okay? Let's say you have to wash a lot of dishes. So that idea, you're like, oh man, what is this? It's like, this is not important to me. And let's say you wash dishes in this daydream, and you're thinking of other. You're thinking of like what you're going to do after, right? So it's literally like excuse my language, but a half-ass moment of efficiency, right? Now, let's say you're a person who you have to wash, let's say 200 dishes, and you're like, okay, I don't care about this, but I have to. Let's say you have to, right? It's one of those things in nature you have to attend to, So let's say you come and say, well, okay, now if you decide you want to clean those dishes, right? Now the mind can here really add dimensions. So in some sense, something that you don't care about, you have to make it important for you, right? So the person has to think, okay, so if there's 200 dishes, how long does it take me to, in some sense, wash 100 dishes, right? And let's say the person tests that out, right, and sees it takes them, for example, 5 minutes. Then they're like, that's ridiculous. This should take me like 3 minutes. And the person eventually, by the nature of the importance of where the attention wanted to go, so the person your brain finds a strategy. Your brain is a storehouse of, think of it like, of films. There we go. Your brain is a film library. It's a film library that certain at parts of the library you have authorization. Certain parts of the library you're like, oh my god, there's no light on. It's like, I can't. It's like, the person's like, can you imagine someone who's like, I love libraries, but not when there's light there.
I like the darkness of the library. It would be one of those things where you'd be like, oh my god, it's like the whole purpose of the act is it requires the light. On one level, it's either self-activation, it's other activation, or it's unknown activation. And known activation, I would say self-activation and other activation are parts of known activation. There we go. So how you activate yourself in the outer realms is either from within or without, right? So for example, when I come to give these talks, it's like if I depend on their direction based on too much the outer realms, then I lose sight of the inner realm. For example, if my attention comes to the inner realm more, it's like I lose a bit of sight of the outer realm. I feel it's a natural thing. I think maybe many people are experiencing the same. But nature is nature. What can we do? We can have whatever amount of theories on it, but it's like it's an artwork. It's an artwork that either correlates to simple known activity, or it's an artwork that correlates to the unknown, the opposite, the unknown and the complex. And if we are creatures beyond language, how much of life are we missing out if we are looking at the language? And it's strange. At the same time, it's like if we didn't have the language, there would be nothing to do. But if we have the language, we forget how we're being alongside everything. So I think maybe the behavior of human beings has to do with what is occupying their attention. And if what is occupying the attention is a character in a story, technically that's where world peace has to begin. Can you imagine there arises this interviewer in the future? Let us call it the global interviewer. Some person, I'm gonna playfully sprout a prophecy. In the future, guys, there will come a global interviewer, a person who will go to the leaders of all nations and just interview them and be like, we don't care about policy, strategy, anything. How is the story of the world starting for you as a character in a world? Do you know? That means it's like I don't know how politics could have ever been honest, because in some sense the worldview is important, but the worldview is hidden in the inner realms, and the inner realms can never be shared. So in some sense, an expectation of perfection in the outer realms is an expectation of it's like we don't want to break simultaneous multidimensional law now, but the global interviewer, let us say, is going to try to create the same chessboard for the world view of the navigators of big systems, pretty much. Everything is a system to some degree. Now, some systems are so big we can't process it. For example, how big the whole universe is, because the universe is active in some way. We can't systemize it, But for example, you might not believe, but when everything I look at or I try to understand The moment I can see it as an image, I can also see it simultaneously as geometry. So think of it this way, that you're a person that you've trained your inner realms to you've trained watching your inner realms, you know and now you've noticed that it is in a sort of in the simplicity of the presence of the observer. There is an innate nature, and from there is a free will, not from the any sort of body. So in some sense, it's like God and man stop dancing around. The presence of the universal sector activates, And think of it this way. Imagine right now, we're finding a society that people find it in anywhere in the world, pretty much. It's like this, that you can't trust the outer realms. Then the reason you can't trust the outer realms, because so many unknown variables, and you don't know about the nature of the person. Some people can, but I'm saying just as an example, right? And because there's distrust in society, people don't want to display authenticity in a state where they don't trust, because that's in some sense a vulnerability that can evoke the emotion of the fool. So people who fear being a fool, they are actually enslaved by their intellect, And it's not a big deal, but being a fool is like, tripping and people laughing, and you also laughing, when you saw the video later, So, so it would be like, you know what I mean? There's something about the realm that if a being attains or cultivates a wisdom that surpasses language, this world will be easy to function in. It will planet. Think of it this way: the spirit of nature, the animate wind that is moving these temporary leaves that we are, becomes our ally. And people should treat literally like, I personally don't have kids, but if I did, I would just tell them, listen, regardless of whatever you hear in life, from whoever you hear, just realize that at every moment it's like a new signal. And really the art of living is not the art of believing or disbelieving. The art of living is to ride the waves, to pilot. And that is the superior, I wouldn't even say man, woman. It's where our minds are running to a speed that the soul deserves. It's as if, think of it this way, the body is preparing, like imagine it's like the body is hosting a party, okay? The physical body, right? And then the mind, it has in some sense, the body has prepared the room for the mind. And the mind has come into the room and has seen what the body has done, and the mind knows the soul, and the mind's like, oh my God, body, you gotta do more. And so the body and the mind are preparing the party for the entrance of the soul, right? For some people, they have this view that when the child is born, the soul enters. But I would tell you, this is hilarious. It's actually when we die. It's the other way. We got it reverse. It's technically we die to existence, and then we are born to life. That means I'll say that again. It's as if we feel we are a vehicle, and I'm pretty sure many metaphysical circles, and especially Abrahamic religions and those contexts, right? They have the view that the soul enters the body. Right? And in the religious view, the soul is God. In the mystical and other denominations, the soul is not necessarily God. Truth is not even an image, in certain mystical schools, But anyways, it's as if we don't know, then we know. Then after we know, we see, we also know the unknown, then we have no issue with the unknown. then it's kind of like we keep knowing the unknown and unknowing the known, you know. And there's been some people back in the day who would like literally, you know, as lightning strike, they said karma. You know what I mean? And really, what I'm saying by this, of course, this is a vocal presentation, but karma is how you drive the vehicle. So think of it that you have rented a karma because you're a biological being that is literally in a world, and it has to go with the world's program, you know. So we have rented, and think of it this way: the presence of an attributeless attention and a spacious mind, a mind space. Oh my God. You know. The mind looks at the body and says, "Body, what are you doing?" And the body's like, "I'm afraid." And the mind's like, "Okay, relax, you know, I'm here, you know." And then the mind suddenly is like getting afraid. That means the mind has relaxed the body, but the mind is afraid. This is where I would say not an existential crisis happens, an experiential crisis happens in human life. This can happen. An experiential crisis has to do with how the inner realms are intervening with the freedom you can have in the outer realms, really. Do you know? And because I speak, believe it or not, think of it this way: before the human story, everything is design. That means the only real body of existence is design. Geometry is the only thing that's in this room here. Everything of the relationship, it's between geometry. I will tell you, we are in a net. In a book I wrote, oh man, let me see if I can find it. There's a chapter, the last chapter of this book I wrote called The Great Work. It's an odd book, you know. You don't have to go, you know. It's not, the book's not calling to anyone, you know. But unless they call to it. But I'm saying, like, the book is. I wrote this idea. I called it the web of Inas, INAS. I wrote this years ago, and so it's this spiral grid that it's as if this multi-dimensional movement into self and world. So it's as if in one state you can see it as a macrocosmic self and a macrocosmic world, and you can see it as a microcosmic self with a microcosmic world, right? So then after some point, it doesn't matter what kind of design, self or world relationship there is. It's based on how your attention, as the Zen master said, climbs the mountain while already being at the top. Think of it this way: the mind prepares for the battles the body has to go through. And how it prepares is by receiving orders from the soul. Yet the soul is not known. So the mind cannot know, in some sense, how it knows when it explains it to the body. The body will never understand what the mind knows. You know, I'm using the traditional archetype of body, mind, soul. So, sorry, the traditional model, not archetype. The traditional model of honestly, the easiest way to keep this body, mind, soul idea alive is to say the legend of the three brothers. I'm going to create it. Let's call it from now on the legend of the three brothers, right? The younger brother was the body. The middle brother was the mind. The older brother was the soul. And so one day the soul came into the room and saw that the mind and body were fighting. The younger and the older brother were fighting. And what the soul does is it immediately protects the younger brother. What that means is whoever, like the true presence of attention, the soul's command like the soul's in programming. I mean, that's a ridiculous thing to say, but let me say it like um, the soul has a responsibility to the wagon and the horses, rather than the chariot driver. If the chariot driver was the mind, the horses were the body, and the not wagon, but the chariot was the soul. So the soul will defend the mind from the body, and the mind will feel lost in duality. So I would say there is no such thing as angels and demons. There is a demonic nature, though. There is an angelic nature, though. What this means is how the attention is automatically piloted before the person consciously moves their attention, right? One life force is separating things and understanding itself that way. The other life force is unifying things. That means the angelic nature is pretty much Taoism. Lao Tzu pretty much says, the instruction of Lao Tzu is the same as be an angel. And the angel doesn't have free will, it's all the divine will, it's all the Tao moving. Right? So Taoists are trying to be angels. Anarchists have defined pretty much, let's say, those driven towards chaos, they're demonic. It doesn't matter. It doesn't, like, for example, let's say you're in a room, right? And it's a room of, like, everything in the room is gentle. And okay, let's say you have like 10 people in a room, and one of these 10 people suddenly starts fragmenting the group. This one person doesn't like how they feel in the moment, so they want to destroy, right? So the whole group would in that moment look at that source of fragmentation beginning, and in some sense, it's as if the person has been possessed by a lack of rhythm. Technically not possessed, but the person has gone off in, like, their antenna has gone to another. The antenna has changed, like those old school car antennas. So it's like that means health is literally the antenna being kept in a proper way. That's psychological health. It's not any sort of self-improvement belief till the end of time, carrot on a stick, salvation, Our honesty is our greatest. It doesn't matter if you're here's the thing. It's like, this is the one view I find that is like the giant in human civilization, right? That because here's the thing, for me, I see all ideological systems on the planet as kids in a classroom, right? And imagine these kids in a classroom have fought with one another, right, throughout time. For example, the different religions, or even disagreements between philosophers, or even conflicts between scientists. In every universe of a sort of movement of profession, there has been a sort of test of honesty of how much the moment cared for the novel, and how much the moment it was easy to judge from the past.
we seek freedom, not realizing our psychologies are simulated from within. That's the whole point of the free will. The free will is not an illusion. The free will is invisible, and therefore has to be rendered an illusion to the visible. And in some sense, the biggest secret was that the word secret never existed, that nature has an interconnectivity at work, that there is never only one voice. Do you know that means? It is in some sense the voices of mankind will kindly become the breath of an advanced civilization. Do you see, it's as if we never left nature, but we thought we did. The thought was not in nature. The thought is resistant. You see? And thought is not the truth. Thought is a mask that when we freak out and we don't know what to do with the unknown, we put it on. That means if somebody, it's like this, it's like, is somebody going intensely to someone and being like, hey man, like tell me the truth, like that intensity is going to be in some sense, like it's going to disturb, so they're never going to get the truth. How can you get a truth from a disturbed mind? So you see, it's like the human nature is, the brain is designed to, technically we can say per psychology is how the brain breathes. I think that's one of those statements, It's like the world is even too big to know it, So technically it's literally like we're tourists. The intellect is like touring. We're like surveillance cameras for higher dimensions, hilariously. Poetically I'm saying. Our eyes, could it be that they have no owner? Could it be that nature was never a concept? Could it be that direct experience could never have an illusion? And so it is still the choice. It is the choice. Illusion, all illusions are a choice. That means it's as if they asked the person, how did you get out of the simulation? The person said, I chose to. That's how you get out of simulations. If we really wanted to, like freak out, everybody wanted to freak out. Oh my God, is this like a simulation from is the world not here from here? Like, is the world not from here? That's exactly it. The world is not from here, guys. And when you come to the here and now, you realize how hollow language is. The world is not from here. I think I've been wrong. Honor this sentence by writing a book on it. The world is not here. It's not from here. So one option within, one option without, then it all branches out. Then free will animates and simulates stories out of how it's branched out, the dimensions of its ability to fathom intelligence. And once your mind becomes your ally, which technically means you served the whole moment. So think of it this way: the person doesn't know what the mind is, but they have this idea they want to be an ally. They want the mind to be their ally, and the mind is not some sort of esoteric freak out show, It's like literally it's nature. Like my metaphysics, I'll be honest, my synchronicities are very in the druid context. For me, nature's in the movement of the natural world. That's where I literally I would say my I awoke to my true self like Tarzan, I awoke to my inner realms like Tarzan. I was literally in nature alone in that moment.
So the world is a superior teacher. If nature is your teacher, then it's as if nature's instructions become unique to your eyes. And the whole thing is that as we become more collective, the hierarchies, in some sense, they become so multidimensional we can't maintain them. That means, imagine we have good and bad, and imagine in like 200 years somebody does something bad and somebody goes, oh my god, that was like level 3782 of evil, of something that was bad. That was like that level bad. Like we could totally branch out the storytelling of how good things are, how bad things are, how real things are, how unreal things are. That's just literally language flowing in the air. It's just the work, what's really coming from within that has found it important enough to step out into the outer realms. That means, for example, let's say you might be a person who one day you thought of like going and uploading a YouTube video. You thought of starting a YouTube channel, for example, right? And you did that YouTube channel, but because there was an egoic desire, you couldn't understand why you did it. And let's say you stop or whatnot, or you don't stop. Whatever happens, right? But it's like, over time, the person realizes what they could not realize when they were at another state of consciousness. Pretty much, memory is another way of saying a changing self is looking behind its shoulder. Or a changing self has eyes on its back. But that's too meta. The world is just being itself. That means when man stops being himself, he learns from how nature is being nature. And that's where all that inner peace and pure land and mysticism and yoga, that is the true teaching of it, right? You find a peace that you neither blindly love your world, or truly fear your world. It becomes a moment where I would say your mind rests. Your mind is like, oh my God, I didn't have to save the world, and the soul's like, no shit, oh my God. But I'll tell you, the mind is like the older brother treats both brothers as the younger brother. The soul has compassion for its mind and its body, The older brother cares. But the older brother is way more real with the middle brother than the younger brother. With the younger brother, it keep things in the bubble of the younger brother. That means that's the thing about children that I think many people don't realize, right? That they are in a bubble, that they don't have reference points yet, right? So all those parents, for example, I don't know, maybe the world's headed this way and we can't do anything about it, but like, but I'm saying it's like the eyes learn. And then they resculpt themselves, literally. Like, think of it this way, we reap what we sow. And every experience is building to something. That means I ask this often for myself as just a sort of karmic reality check, where I ask myself, what is in my space, why is it here, and why am I here having a relationship with what's in my space, right? And this sort of view makes me kind of, for a moment, double check my own eyes. And the moment I double check you double check your eyes once, you realize you can endlessly check your eyes. That means that you can endlessly, literally, our psychologies are, I created a term for it, experience tunneling, History is kept through language. Language, the best way we could see it is as a technology. And the best way we can see a technology is as a technology we can use. And the best technology we can use is a technology that's actually good for the being, right? People care about their diet, right? So now imagine people were like, what is my species eating? Do you know? But how is the mind of my species processing its position in this space-time continuum? And so that effort has somehow been kept behind the curtain that, believe it or not, never was there. Sometimes you see, there's sometimes some moments in life, I don't know, like, so there were certain intense moments of my life where somehow there was some miracle of nature that I felt it was like it got me through. Do you know what I mean? But like, a mind that walks in this world without fear gets to see the world, so the intellect opens up. But a mind that walks in this world without an unborn love, you know, without love, I'm telling you, it's like as if like if we were immortal beings, maybe we could work till the end of time. But the tired soul must reside somewhere at the end, you know. The show goes on, and every person pretty much has to have an ability to step out of the inner show to see the outer show, then to be able to see the outer show through multiple lenses of the inner show. And then eventually, after enough information has it's like once the person realizes their true speed, then they move at that speed. So think of someone who's never ran before, and then the person runs for the first time. Do you know? Consciously, like children run. But I'm saying, like, imagine you as a human being consciously go for your first run in this life. You know what I mean? The first time you experience the dimension of running. Consciously, and it's as if you never knew you could run that fast. And now imagine belief systems are denying people to know how fast their minds can really run, how advanced their inner realms really are, right? We are like kind of like incredibly advanced beings, but not because we're claiming it, because literally we're the most advanced thing this nature, the surface of this planet has produced, you know? Like when I say advanced communicators, I don't see like, you know, penguins singing opera, you know what I mean? Like, our species has access to a dimension of sight that many other species don't. Automatically, that renders us the most advanced visible creature, right? We don't know if there's more advanced and invisible numenology happening, but don't fear emptiness, because without it, your life can't be fulfilled. You can't enjoy what was always there from the beginning. Also, there is something that trust is the only thing that I would say separates the archetype of the old soul and the young soul. Is that the old soul knows there is no young or old soul. Do you know that means the eyes have been open so long, so we think our eyes are going to close and it's going to be non-existence and oh my god, we couldn't see anything, right? But imagine it like life and like after the physical lifetime of the human being, the body was not around, but your sight was here. Your sight was the whole moment. what would happen then? You would see there would be nothing, the world will be happening as you. There would be no purpose. And it's not that that's a bad thing, you know, like, you know, we don't, anything we put a blueprint of an expectation on, it becomes lifeless. Or we don't, it's karmically, we won't, oh my God, how do I say? I'm wording too many emotions in this talk, guys, but bear with me. We have seen individual inefficiency. We have seen individual efficiency. We have seen collective inefficiency. We're living at that time right now. But we have not seen collective efficiency. So I would tell you that is the goal of history for now. To see if it's even possible to be remember the advanced civilization that we will build. We were timeless before the concept of time existed. There was no concept of suffering. There was, for example, maybe pain, discomfort, like, you know, saber-toothed tigers and all this in our history. What I'm saying, it's like when it comes, it's like fear for a multidimensional being is being rude to the unknown. The unknown expects a greeting, usually. So, it all starts from 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. They're a dimension as an object. Guys, I keep going back to this because this is what we are literally in the moment. We either build some next level efficient visions, or we return to the void. Pretty much you either have work to do in this existence or there's nothing to do. You know? there's this term you see like in like, I don't know, in like a certain times, pop culture, modern culture. It was like the person, it's like when it comes, it's like fear for a multidimensional being is being rude to the unknown. The unknown expects a greeting, usually. So, it all starts from 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. They're a dimension as an object. Or we return to the void. Pretty much you either have work to do in this existence or there's nothing to do. You know? there's this term you see like in like, I don't know, in like a certain times, pop culture, modern culture. It was like the person, it's like when it comes, it's like fear for a multidimensional being is being rude to the unknown. The unknown expects a greeting. Sorry guys, my attention went to something else on the screen. So guys, keep in mind all these talks that are on this channel are pretty much like my way of saying we're beyond language. So I'm talking about the silence, which is the unknown for the known sound. That example I wanted to say, it's in some sense. I wanted to connect what I was saying to some cultural context, but it's like the cultural context doesn't fit, I think. Honestly, it's like empty piece of paper, write what's best for everything. And that's the strategy of human psychology. We either stay in a sort of individual abode, or we design a collective abode, or we remember it somehow. Some sort of evolutionary interconnected return to nature. And if we think of value, just the idea of value, the value of anything can drop from any scale to nothing. That means you can find, it's so easy to find an angle, to see the hollowness of the dimension. This is why nirvana it took an instant. People chased truth for years to realize that they are it. What you're being, you cannot find. What you're being, you cannot have. What you're being, you are. And anything, the moment the person has some sort of embodiment, that is the mind's game. So for the common man, the body and the mind are separate. The mind is an illusion, right? Is a simulation. But for the uncommon man, the body is the mind. At least as far as truth can be concerned, Everybody is left at the station of their eyes, Truth internally can be the same. In the outer realms, we should just inspire a civilization that cares to keep art alive. Art should literally be the captain of the ship, because any context has to update if it wants to live on. And you know what it is? It's kind of strange, because sometimes I feel ideological systems can be burdensome. What does that mean? It's like a giant object. Okay, imagine a giant cube, a throne back in the day, let's say a giant cube, and people are carrying that. And imagine the person, instead of living life, they are under the weight of that cube. That's the issue with past ideological systems needing human beings to keep themselves alive. So either the novelty lives in the moment, free, or in some sense the past has already pulled on your tie, regardless of the suit you wear. So what I mean by that, first of all, I hope people stop wearing ties. It's the most messed up thing to wear. Like ties are a health hazard. If chained to the imagery of a temporary world, the unknown will be met abruptly. If liberated by the eternal, the unknown could never be abrupt. It is you. Imagine the person imagine guys, this is hilarious. Imagine there was a fortune teller, right? And this fortune teller is sitting with a crystal ball, and the person's like, tell me who my guides are, my spirit guides. And the fortune teller is like, your spirit guides are you. And the person's like, what do you mean? I have a relationship with interdimensional beings. What do you mean, man? How could they be me? And and the person's like, no, they're you. You don't get it. And the person's like, what do you mean? Are they my future selves? Like parallel senses of self? Am I communicating with me in a parallel universe? Like, are the imaginations linked? What's going on? And then imagine the fortune teller's like, no, your spirit guides are you. Everything is you, for God's sakes. I'm you too. And what that means is that's the nature of the mind. It is taking before giving. So it is branding before knowing. We're such strange creatures. I mean, like, nature definitely had an imagination.
And I feel that is the case. Only your own eyes can tell your fortune. An era of advanced communication. What I see is like the species no longer per se not stopping its arguments and discussions and disagreements. I'm not even saying like we should stop like war now, because we can't, But I'm saying we have to first see that war begins from the mind of man, and so it's the human behavior. That means in the inner realms, everybody's free. A person sees an action movie and doesn't feel guilty that they're just watching so many people being leaving their bodies. You know what I mean? So it's like in an action movie, the person doesn't care, but when it's in real life, they cry. Do you know what I mean? So a person laughs at a bad action movie. Do you know what I mean? When the characters die, but in real life, when it happens, we cry. And why is there that distinction? It's technically a double life. So we're not alone here. But when I say we, I mean that every person's psychology is like self and world. So there is the unknown divinity of nature, of the world, and then there's the unknown divinity of the self that is a part of nature. So technically it's the world of puppeteering, the psychology that thought it owned it all, I'm saying that we should be grateful for the unknown, and that's the lesson we should have learned from history long ago. Which history was like, can you imagine somebody was like, yeah, let's create this idea history, and it was, let's say it was a man doing it, and so it was like his story, do you know what I mean? So he's like, the person saw the two words his and story, and they're like, okay, there's something off here. The person took the space away, and it was like his story, and he's like, okay, that's the history for snakes, let's go. History. But anyways, whatever, so the person takes that S away, and it's just his story becomes history. And this doesn't mean like, oh my God, feminists get ready for battle. This means that we're just creatures doing whatever we can while we can. That's it. And if we stop freaking out, we can live in an advanced way. That's like the whole lesson. But really, it's like history is the catalyst That means history, like the person who, let's go back to the person is like, all right, let's create this concept history, you know. And so the person is like, all right, guys, just add this word in the dictionary, you know what I mean? Like, just put that with the others, keep it alive, right? And the person's like, all right, this is just something playful, right? And the person in his mind, it's like, it's just a word. Like, no way it's gonna define the whole species, you know? And imagine the person who came up with the word history suddenly opens his eyes now, somehow teleports here now, and it's like, oh my god, what have I done? What have I done? And the person's like, so there's so many stories. And stories endless simulate. And the whole point of media is that it's a visual story. The music industry, it's an auditory story, So in some sense, it's like, really, we are like commanders in a battlefield where the species is under ideological warfare. That means when I say the language wars, that means imagine language. Not language is not a bad thing, but it's an alien that we've angered. And the alien's attacking us. Do you know what I mean? And so the alien is throwing something at us, and the moment the language hits the person's like, oh my god, I'm just a person in this, da, 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 da. And they go on forgetting that how multidimensional, they forget their unborn multidimensional birthright. Or I should say they forget their multidimensional unbirthright, Unbirth, oh my god. See, language is out of control, guys. We gotta do something about this, but as a species. For me, I realized something. I don't think I'm like a person who's saying some of the stuff I'm saying to you so easily. There was a time where in my youth, I was in a kind of, I would say, pushed into my inner realms by something. The way the nature of the world had happened was that I had distrusted the world instantly. Do you know? And that distrust didn't mean I distrusted my mind. But I'm telling you, the mind had loops, and that's just basic human conditioning. Right, we pretty much get fired up with emotions like a football coach, like everything the child's eyes sees in the world. Like a football coach is like, all right, get ready, get pumped, we're gonna go defeat the opponent, And so the whole thing is like it's an emotional charge into an ideological battle that in an instant you could have never been in. That's how children are they're being armed with ideas from the past to go and handle the future. It's hilarious, right? People don't realize you gotta think like the future if you want to move like the future. Do you know what I mean? Like, nature is literally, it's like, the word true is there if the UNR was there. Imagine somebody creates a word, and let's say, that somebody's me right now. We have nature, let's have nature, a state of nature. This can become like a modern Zen practice. Attain nature. This is epic. Guys, oh no, I wrote it wrong. Hold on. That's nature. This is nature. So as of this moment, it's 5:15 Monday, 2020. What is it? October 20. October 19th. And so the Zen path of nature. Stay true to nature. That's its only teaching.
On a speck of dust, we have hopes and dreams. You believe that? History is a blessing, and knowledge is a blessing, and there are no enemies in this world. There's just creatures that have updated so far. And onwards as we go into the space-time continuum, we are finding that either we create technologies that take us beyond the space-time continuum, or we change the way we set up the dimensions into reality. And so that is the most crucial ability of the intellect. That is why anybody who has gone towards knowledge, they will ultimately be led to service. It is true that they say, like in certain contexts, when it like from the voice of the economist, I definitely agree. Here's the thing: there are teachers and there's explorers. Okay, so let's say the teacher is doomed. Oh man, I'm joking. The teacher is like the teacher and student. It's just that it's a duality. This duality is a conditional access to truth. So the whole point of the teaching, though, is an unconditional access to truth. Now, unconditional access to truth is impossible if truth is only based on the outer realms, and there's more than that going on here. Right? So if we lie to ourselves from the beginning by thinking everything is material, we may be totally missing out on all the immaterial ways that our psychology could have stretched out. Even our cultures could have evolved through new contexts. You see, it's like either we live through the stories of the past, or we in some sense become the stories of our future. Rumi says, don't be satisfied with stories, go unfold your own myth. That going and unfolding your own myth is the greatest sadhana. Is the greatest thing. That is like the only thing the person has to do. If there's one thing the person's like, I'm in this situation, that situation, the one answer you can give always is that you're here like a candle, try to figure out what this light is, the mystery of your own life's source. Yeah, it doesn't get more mysterious than that. So let us honor history. And we can even create a word, call it heritory. I don't know. We could totally do that. Or we could create a word, instead of having it based on our identities, we can call it Cosmos story. No, doesn't sound right. Let's just call it the linguistic simulation. I mean, if it's like history is recorded events, so history can fit into the linguistic simulation, but in the linguistic simulation, imagination is there as well. And so the discrimination between imagination and reality, it has to do based on where your attention wants to go. So if your attention was, literally imagine you teleported, but you appeared in the middle of a portal. Literally, you appeared in the middle of a portal where like you could literally, like a revolving door, see both the inner and the outer. So after some point, it's your choice if the being wants to live more as a mind moving a body, or as a body having a mind that in certain conditional circumstances feels it has attained some sort of perfect. Like the past, it can't be, the knowledge can't be really in the past, because it's past already. The past, like it's like true knowing has to do with like your presence being the driving energy of your mind. The person's true presence. There's no honorable way other than that I can say. How you are truly being present right now as a being, not as a human being. Like we have the word, we call ourselves life forms. So we're literally forms like, you know, a particular situation. Like we've had a particular evolution, and so these particles, these forms, have suddenly become, through the emergence of the brain, an ability to project a reception of an environment as a mind and as a psychology. I totally evaporated my own metaphor. The mind, it requires a friend. The mind, think of it this way, regardless, there can be a psychology, on a psychology level, yeah, the person's lonely, but then there is the soul, you could say maybe in back in the day they would say the lost soul, right? Because for me, it's as if the body is a simulation of the mind, and the mind is a simulation of a soul, and these are three concentric spheres, how could the soul ever be lost? So the lost soul is a weird way the mind is branding, you know? That means, honestly, the way language works is that it can be reduced into silence. It could be silence. It could be... everything in the space-time continuum can either move towards the infinite or it can move towards the void. And that's it. If you get tired of duality, you might go and like you sit in nature and feel a sort of oneness, and that's an incredible attainment, but at the same time, it's as if it's not solving the duality, it's leaving the duality, you know? It's like a multidimensional being that is multidimensionally ignoring the dualistic problem, and so that ignorance of the dualistic problem is like on a battlefield. It's like when you can help with like pour a bucket of water on a burning house. Like there's no greater truth than that in that moment. Our responsibility to the living realm should be prioritized, and our lives, our sensitivity to how the being is like a journey. Every person is like journeying, literally. You know, like imagine you met someone on a mountain, right? And you were on the same mountain. So guess what? Everybody's on the same planet, but we're journeying on a sphere that appears flat, like it's on the next level. You know, it's like it's like somebody was like, do we need the word metaphysics? And somebody was like, no, physics is weird enough. Physics is so, because there's no really ground found, ideological certainty in a changing outer realm, you know? Find your experiential eyes beyond ideological lies. That's the whole thing, you know? And that's why I chose the name like Mr.Within. Because it's literally like realizing there's at least for human eyes, it is like a responsibility to kind of use this. So think of it this way, that regardless of what society says, and regardless of what the conditioned social archetype of the self says, right? It's like, because we have multiple memories, you can say like there is no such thing as forgetfulness. There is just a sort of bird like flying in a room where there's different people speaking. So when the bird is closer to that sound in that landscape, it suddenly hears all the sounds. When it's closer to the other landscape, like above another. Anyways, the metaphor's done its job. Oh man. It's like first, like, what are we doing in emptiness? Then what is emptiness doing? Like, you know? And what is the questioner of that emptiness doing? You know, and what's that attributeless witness doing? And at that point, there's literally, we free ourselves from our body by realizing we are also space. And we free ourselves from space by also realizing it's totally okay to be a body. There's the ego is not ignorance is you can say a sin, right? But having an ignorant ego is not a sin. Do you know? Even though in modern culture we call it modern, but it's like literally the witch trials of an abstract pure land that never culturally existed. You know what I mean? Like the world is like being made as it goes. And too much interference from the past is a disturbance. Too much interference even from the future can be a disturbance. Magna Vox says, in our fall into history, we step into the void. Yeah, that's kind of pretty much like the great goodbye. And you know, if we were all like in the future a collective being, there would be communication would be rendered unnecessary. That means our whole philosophies and knowledge and all of this is important because we're individually experiencing life. And the world is surreal. Like the word reality doesn't exist. It should be exchanged with surreality. You know what I mean? Like everybody in the audience, all the viewers are like, yes, we know what you mean. First, we serve the body of the civilization, then we serve the mind of the civilization, caring for our history, updating it geometrically, making it incredible. That means, like, just because history has been recorded in one way, we could start having an emotional history. You know, we can have a sort of like the history of also the inner realms, the imagination, a sort of psychological history. Like the word history, literally, we accepted language too soon. That's the whole issue. There's no such thing as intelligence. There's just what language is allowing you to move as a sort of. It's like language is activating identity. Language is activating personality. Right? And it's not just language, it is also language is allowing the inner realms to be shared in the outer. So Magna says we cannot escape the reality of our humanness. Here's the issue. That sentence could be true, but the thing is, if we were never human, there would be nothing needed to escape. We're already free. Remember, there was this yogi named Kabir. They asked him, how long does it take to get enlightened, bro? You know, and Kabir is like, it takes, he said, half of an instant. Half of an instant. That means Kabir's telling you, buddy, it's right now. You're asking me how long it takes to get enlightened. You're asking me how long it takes to see the world you're in. How it's the light in our eyes that is being our search in a materialistic culture. It's like the eyes have become the king of certainty. And it's kind of like very spoiled when you look at it as a multidimensional being. The person's like, I want truth, but only if it's accessible to this one sense out of 5. You know what I mean? Or let's say even the 5 senses. But I'm saying it's like the sensory is being accepted. There's a processing. The brain is literally doing something. That's pretty much, everybody has to become Sherlock Holmes and wonder what their brain is doing. What their attention, how the human attention is moving on. Where we're driving towards. And in a cyclical world, it's literally like the refresh button on the browser. Night and day, you know? When it comes night, it's like literally we should have this probably an emotional system that's like a bell curve, you know? Where in the day, like there's, I don't know, there's two. That means it's like emotions. I don't know where to go with this, but regardless of, even if, let's say there's a story of truth, let's say there's one story, Lord of the Rings style, one ring to rule them all, you know, so so let's say there's one story, right? Now that story can't grow. You can't grow in accordance to your own will. So eventually the unknown, so we can say the known is unknown to the unknown, potentially. Because the unknown doesn't function through a domain of ideological knowledge. Okay, so Magnus says, even with these spiritual awakenings, everyone's hands are stained crimson from sin. Okay, first of all, I really hope you're using that word in the mathematical sense, you know? Better be in the mathematical sense, because sin in what context? Do you know how many people are judging themselves culturally in like massive ways? Like people may feel like their self-judgment is unique to themselves. They may feel their stress is unique to themselves, but it literally has to do with the ecosystem, with the environment. The environment is like I'm telling you, like, if the person is really attentive, every information is just looking for your eyes. There is no sin. The only sin is you waste what you have. That's the only sin. If you have evolved to have this much of an updated human brain, you know, like as an evolutionary being, if you're the most sophisticated evolutionary biomechanism, you know, of nature. So it's as if you don't use it, yeah, it's a sin. If you have a Ferrari and you use it at 10 miles, if you have a Ferrari and you only drive it 10 miles per hour, that's a sin. You know, even if you're going to, like, even not 50 miles per hour, let's say you're someone who wants to go into nature. Let's say you want to drive your Ferrari at 10 miles per hour. You know? That means it's this weird thing of us, instead of being uncomfortable in our world and being like, yo, let me get out of this messed up society, we should have fixed the society. Do you know? Like, I'm pretty sure any person who goes to nature's, the animals are like, buddy, what are you doing here? You're a human being, go there. Go back and realize, go learn to live with the human nature. You know, because there is a spirit of vision to it. Like, just like there's a spirit of nature, there's a spirit of humanity. You know, nature has its own vibe. Relaxation Time says, we are driving towards trying to control our destiny and to live longer than our planet allows as a species. Currently not looking so good. Here's the thing. We're not trying to control our destiny. We know we can't. First of all, that's the starting point. We know it's too big to process. We can't index all the stars in the universe to come to a firm conclusion. So it's and because of the temporary entropic nature of things, what we experiment is changing the moment we're even experimenting. So think of it this way: it doesn't matter how accurate the experimental finding is, the world is changing all the time. So you're just snapshotting moments of change, and that these snapshot moments of change can limit how the attention has a freedom to, in some sense, be multidimensional before being made singular in a certain way, right? So I would say this is what I think is happening. We were objects, we suddenly, something happened, we woke up and we realized we're subjects. Now we're waking up and we're realizing we're not just subjects. And we are literally, the linguistic simulation is shaking. How? By us infinitizing it. And this has been the indirect great contribution of all fiction writers and science fiction efforts in this realm. That's literally science fiction, means the person saw the past, saw the present, what next? And that's the mind started leaping. But the mind is non-local, so it simulates. The mind doesn't move, it generates. Right? So that's the thing. So if you have the will, if you look at anything, like I personally have practiced this algorithm, right? So what it is you can look at any object, and once you have comfortably noticed what it means to you, and you're okay with that, you're okay to see what else the thing means. But if you're emotional with ideology, you get defined, you get possessed by the ideology, right? So I'm just saying, relaxation time, that it's time to maybe relax. That our planet, here's the thing, our planet is, people are seeing themselves, their sense of self first. They're prioritizing their sense of self first before prioritizing the victory of their sense of their own world. Right? So we care for the self in the world more than the world which this self is in. Right? And so this is what needs to change. Right? So how it changes is you need to have inspiration. Right now, Civilization 1.0 has given great inspiration for you to become a glorified individual. Go wear a lot of shiny stuff and become a parade for for humanity, not realizing that your whole advanced brain was just hiding, waiting for you to, in some sense, pick up the pen. And what that means is that the intellect can move in ways that surpass any sort of cultural justification. That means the speed of geometry is so faster than emotion, right? That if the design of the moment becomes more important than the outcome, the design of the moment becomes the driving force. So I would say it's like trying to cultivate this ability, like Thor's hammer. Like imagine Thor slamming his hammer onto the ground in his training. So imagine you're slamming your ideological systems to the ground, right? And as you speed up the narrative where time is existing in, right? And this is you could say somehow, you could poetically correlate this to the idea of space-time, where in some sense the faster we go, the slower time becomes. So what happens when we go faster than the speed of light? Time doesn't exist to that which was going slower than the speed of light, right? So the thing is, there's so many people, even in Star Trek, they were it's like hyper, what did they call it? Sorry, I don't know if it was Star Trek, but some sci-fi show where it was like hyper speed and hyperdimensional travel, right? Hyperspeed travel, something like that, right? So next level supreme speed, right? And it's like, for a moment, just considering that speed is always there, right? So it's as if literally we have to create a spacecraft that is a fishing rod, that suddenly gets pulled by the fish, rather than a spacecraft that is literally trying to build an engine that goes that fast. Do you know what I mean? So, and of course, I'm speaking to one person in the first person view. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening. history has given us a reason to respond to the void, pretty much because we're creatures that we have. What other option do we have? We have an option to either do nothing, or to do something, right? We have an option to use our biological existence for some sort of velocity, direction, and speed, and control that, or in some sense just not care for how the mind of the I want the imagination of the species to be so many steps ahead that reality instantly updates. And this can only happen through a global renaissance of honoring the outer realms. That means not trying to have a sort of subjective narrative replace the truth of what is actually objectively real, like this table right now, semi-angrily talking. But our species is boxed in the limits of a knowledge that it created. So imagine like you create a box and you put that box on your head and you're like, yo, this is progress. And now we imagine some people took off the box and they're like, okay, why do I have a box with holes in it on my head? Why not have an Iron Man suit? And imagine that's how Tony Stark was inspired. But that's the thing, it's you free yourself from yourself. Okay, check this out. Imagine there's 4 types of enlightenment. I think I figured it out, guys. 4 types of enlightenment. This is going to explain it. Okay, perfect. So there's let's say that this is like, of course, entertain what I say. Aristotle says it's a sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. So, 4 types of enlightenment. You're a self from a state of there's a self and there's a world and they unite. Okay? There's a self to world enlightenment. There's a self to self, let's say, enlightenment. And let's say there's a world to self enlightenment and a world to world enlightenment. The world to world enlightenment, we can never know. It's not for our eyes. We're like kids in a cradle when it comes to that. And I'm just saying this for poetic mythos. but I'll say like the world to self. This is like the unknown moving the known. I consider this to be the highest position, or not the highest, the most advanced state of communication. So when the unknown moves the known, it's like you are enlightened AF, But when the self moves the self, that's where the truths of your own causal expression. It's as if it's like a fire that burnt out that remembers how the fire was kindled, History is a blindfold to a multidimensional nature that never feared the singular void. That concludes as far as I've seen. As far as I feel it can be seen. Beyond the unknown, like the point of the unknown moving the known, it doesn't mean ideological. It doesn't mean like esoteric, like hide and seek. It means like it means having enough respect for the unknown to let it speak first. So it's kind of like sometimes before I give these talks, I sit down And just through breathing, I start noticing the film, start noticing my mind's life. And that inner film, the moment I can notice it and see it, then I can endlessly speak, and the film also navigates. Because on some level, what I'm saying is also sound to me. In the same way that, like, a person can hear what I'm saying in the English language from a different language and be like, what are those sounds? They would just be sounds. They wouldn't have meaning. In the same way, when I speak, I can also notice how my own voice is also a sound. Just a mere sound. I'm just a creature making a sound here. Just as Terence McKenna said, we're sophisticated apes making advanced mouth noises. Sorry, we're advanced apes making sophisticated mouth noises. There we go. Terence McKenna said that. So on a very basic level, there's nothing to be so serious about. It's a bunch of creatures, like a bunch of plants, but they move around. They're just enduring. Like, that's the most basic level. Right? But if we want to use, let's say we're all like a hunter-gatherer, like back in the day, hunter-gatherer tribe. Now the tribe has to choose. Okay, do we want to go hunt buffalo? And and people are gonna be. Some people are gonna be like, no, it's dangerous. Don't hunt the buffalo. And then and we're like, okay, no. Then it's like it's more dangerous if there is no food or something like that, right? So that there comes suddenly at some point in some collective movement where there wants to be an effort made to advance, right? And this advancement, anytime it becomes selfish, it becomes really. European history has examples of this, right? Examples of I would say there's pretty much two types of kings in history: ignorant kings and enlightened kings. For example, you could say ancient India in Vedic thought. There's many stories of enlightened kings. Like, there was a king who suddenly dreamed he was a beggar, right? And this is a story. This is I forget the king's name, but it's a king back in the day. This king dreams he's a beggar. He literally dreams, in his dream he's a king in a chamber, but he dreams he's a beggar. And he suddenly wakes up in the middle of the night freaked out, right? And he calls forth for his, like, wise man counselor or something. Kings had, like, entourage back then, So the enlightened guru, excuse me, what am I saying? The guy's guru, the king's guru comes, right? And the king's guru comes, and the guy's like, I dreamed I'm a beggar. What does this mean? Does that mean, like, I'm living so bad as a king right now, my next life now I'm going to be a beggar, right? And the guru says, you are neither a beggar. The guru says, you're neither a king. You're neither a beggar. Who are you? The guru shouts this at the king. Can you imagine being someone shouting at a king to wake up to the true nature of reality? Like, that's not easy, That's like there's unborn beings slow hand clapping for that already, So the guy says, who are you? And the person suddenly realizes, the king realizes, yeah, I'm neither a beggar, I'm neither a king, I'm not just the ideology of the moment, similar to how we're not just defined by the language of one moment. Because we compile this incredibly deep, camera that is our face. You know what I mean? Biological camera. Who knew? Everybody's a biological camera, man. It's just that. And the lenses are better than any lens we've seen so far. Technically, a film director is a biological camera looking through. Anyways.
So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Find the honor of your species, serve it while you can. That's the best use of individual life after the individual life is satisfied with its own expectations of its freedom. So once you find your own freedom, then it's like there's what's only left is in some sense a sort of liberation of, like, once the inner realms, the search in the inner realms stops, the outer realms becomes the true divinity. You know, the divinity moves from the inner realms into the outer realms, you know? And that's like, you know, yogic avatar context level. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. And don't just read history, but also write it, you know? And then also write after whatever you've written, you know? If the system updates, it purifies itself, right? So we got to build the advanced civilization like a fountain, probably, you know, so sort of like, you know, levels of overflowing kind of continuity. Cultivate unknown gratefulness.